Free people remember this maxim: we may acquire liberty, but it is never recovered if it is once lost. Jean-Jacques Rousseau eloquently articulated the need to maintain liberty. In a world where the government can take whatever action it deems necessary and rights can be easily invaded, liberty is key. By allowing the government to wave its powerful wand over our rights in the name of national security, we open the gateway by which we slowly lose our privacy. Because I believe that an individual's right is superior to the collective's interest, I stand resolved that when in conflict, the right to individual privacy is more important than national security. So let's first define a couple key terms. First, privacy. Privacy will be defined as the right to be free from secret surveillance and to determine whether, when, how, and to whom one's personal or organizational information is to be revealed. In specific, privacy may be divided into 4 categories: physical, informational, decisional, and dispositional. Explanations of each division are available upon request. National security, a collective term for the defense and foreign relations of a country, protection in the interests of a country. Now, I believe our goal or our highest value in today's debate is that of liberty, and privacy best upholds this value. Let's look at 2 reasons. First is that liberty makes life worth living. The first, liberty really makes life worth living. Liberty gives each of us the freedom to pursue our dreams, explore our interests, speak with freedom, and live the American dream. The second reason is the fact that liberty values the individual, not the collective. Liberty values the individual, not the collective. In nations like China, the right of the citizens were diminished for the benefit of the nation as a whole. Though barely noticeable in its infancy, the gradual recession of people's freedom led to the eventual decay of their freedom. Liberty values the individual's privacy rather than upholding a utilitarian mindset. Point 1, privacy upholds liberty. Point 1, privacy upholds liberty. We have liberty ensured by the 4th Amendment. This guarantees that the government can't interfere with personal privacy, as it is under limit by the Constitution. However, now more than ever, we see our government overstepping its bounds laid down by the Founding Fathers. For example, all 50 states have specified vaccines for students. While vaccinations are not currently mandatory for all citizens, legislation like in Washington state would change the status quo. In this conflict of bodily harm, privacy should be held above national security. According to the National Vaccine Informational Center, quote, "The ethical principle of informed consent to medical risk-taking means that you, as an individual, have the human right to be fully informed about the benefits and the risks of a medical intervention, and to make a voluntary decision without being harassed or coerced by anyone. The informed consent principle protects individuals in every society from exploitation by those in positions of power, medicine, and government," end quote. The privacy ethical principle is a direct means by which privacy places the individual's liberty at the pedestal of utmost importance. Privacy should be held above national security in this very natural respect. Privacy upholds liberty. Point 2, national security degrades liberty. Point 2, national security degrades liberty. During World War II, national security targeted specific U.S. citizens that it viewed as a threat to the society. It disregarded privacy out of fear. Quote, 2 months after the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, ordering all Japanese Americans to evacuate the West Coast. This resulted in the relocation of approximately 120,000 people, many of whom were American citizens, to one of 10 internment camps located across the country. The relocation of Japanese Americans into internment camps during World War II was one of the most flagrant violations of civil liberties in American history. According to the census of 1940, 127,000 persons of Japanese ancestry lived in the United States, end quote. After being forced to sell their property, the people were then divided into camps, which in many respects resembled the camps for Jews in Germany. Barbed wire fences, armed guards on watch, minimal rations, strict curfew, and sleeping barracks. This was their life for years. All because their Japanese skin tone made them unsafe by national security standards. citizens were stripped of their privacy and robbed of their liberty. It's not just one circumstance. National security has many measures in which it encroaches into the citizens' privacy. Today, millions of Americans every day are victims of the NSA metadata collection. Cell phone activity, phone calls, computer history, wiretapping, surveillance. We can look at the Patriot Act as a case in point, according to the American Civil Liberties Union. Quote, under the Patriot Act, the FBI can secretly conduct a physical search or wiretap on American citizens to obtain evidence of crime without providing probable cause, as the Fourth Amendment explicitly requires, end quote. By valuing your ability to be independent from government intrusion, you essentially value your liberty. Privacy is the sole application of liberty. Without it, national security would have no purpose. Hand in hand, liberty and privacy promote the well-being in each one of our lives. Thank you.
All right. All the judges ready? The timer? Ready for it?
Absolutely.
All right, my first question is just that of your definition of individual privacy. Could you tell me that again real quickly?
Yes, it's two sentences and then I defined what it was.
Okay.
It's the right to be free from secret surveillance and to determine whether, when, and how, and to whom one's personal or organizational information is to be revealed.
Okay, and so, go ahead.
Well, yeah, it just goes out, it says, and specific privacy is divided into 4 categories, and then it goes under that. It's physical, informational, decisional, and dispositional.
Okay, now your definition specifically refers to information, correct?
It does.
Okay, so would you say that in today's resolution, the primary conflict does occur with the context of information?
There are several different divisions and several instances in which they do conflict. That's why there's 4 different categories, but information is definitely one of them.
Okay, all right, we'll move on. Now, you also talked about in your first contention about vaccines in the United States.
Yes.
And was this the government requiring people in certain states to become vaccinated?
What was happening is the fact that we look at a lot of nations that actually require mandatory vaccinations in the world. We don't have that in the United States, but actually very recently, Washington State has actually proposed and is trying to pass legislation that would require mandatory vaccinations, which is a direct violation of an individual's right to privacy.
And this is national security at work because they're trying to protect their people?
Yes, it is national security.
Okay, now would the people be harmed by these vaccinations?
Yes, there are a lot of surveys that show that people who are given vaccinations, while they are beneficial, there are several side effects. And the people should be able to decide whether or not they want a needle being stuck into their skin.
Okay.
They shouldn't be forced to do this.
And this is something that has not been passed but could potentially be passed, correct?
It's not passed in legislation. Well, it's in legislation right now. It's not passed. But mandatory vaccinations are in over 60 different countries. So we can actually see it's forced upon some citizens, but it's looking at being passed in the United States.
All right, thank you. All right, now moving on to actually your last example. You talked about NSA metadata.
I did, yes.
And were you referring specifically to Project PRISM in this example?
No, I wasn't referring to that specifically, but I was talking about the fact, the Patriot Act, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, and Project PRISM is usually directly linked to that.
Sure, I guess you could say it was similar to that, but what happens in this instance is the fact that they aren't required to provide probable cause. They're essentially, the FBI is given the ability to go into whatever privacy.
Now, which government program is this that you were referring to specifically? Is this just everything the NSA is allowed to do is?
NSA and FBI, they're very similarly linked when they're pursuing international terrorism or whatever it means.
Okay, so you aren't referring to a specific program though, it's just...
National security is the main actor that enforces, because national security is involved with actually going into personal information.
Okay,
it's part of their job.
So the NSA in this case was able to survey anyone it wanted to?
Yes, and is still able to do that through metadata.
So there's no specific people they're targeting?
I suppose they are targeting people, but the fact is they are not actually looking at what the actual targets are. They're actually collecting metadata from millions of American citizens.
Okay.
They're violating millions of people's privacy.
All right, great. Thank you. No further questions.
We will slowly but surely lose our freedoms. I want to be looking at 3 specific things in today's debate round that really show you that while liberty is a very important value, it supersedes the idea of the general welfare, because at the end of today's debate round, even in the resolution, the only value that upholds the liberty of the people is that of privacy. Now first, let's look at the values. The values. Now she gave about 4 or 5 things in her last speech, but I want to summarize them and respond to all of them with simply 3. The first is that the social contract must be upheld. The social contract must be upheld. In order for a nation to state that they value the social contract is great. We should value it. But when we can see that the government explicitly does not even follow it and violates the ideas of a social contract, then there really is no purpose to having it. We must have laws that are abided by, and this must be followed in order for the social contract or any contract to be truly valued. We value the laws that we have in America. That is the way by which we are able to check the government. But when our government disregards it for the sake of its own interest, which national security obviously does, we can see that it no longer puts the laws or the people at its foremost priority. The second thing is that all people have privacy until it's forfeited. All people have privacy until it's forfeited. Now this is pretty self-explanatory, but it simply states the fact that we all have the right to privacy, but unless you violate someone else's privacy, you will no longer have yours. My right ends where your right begins. This is essentially the idea. The third and final point is that individual privacy is the only value that has the individual as a priority. I know that's really long, but this is a very important idea, that individual privacy is the only value that has its individual as a priority. The whole idea of general welfare, even the word general, refers to a general group of people. General welfare cannot take into account all of the citizens. It simply says we're going to get a group of people, and it says, even in her last speech, she said it simply states certain individuals. And that's the problem, is that it doesn't look into the interests of an individual. It values the collective. I'm not talking about extremes like Hitler, but what we can see in the Hitler example is the fact that when we do value the general welfare, the liberty of the people is devalued, and history is proof of that. The second point is the fact that surveillance does not guarantee terrorism will be prevented. The second, surveillance does not guarantee that terrorism will be prevented. According to The Intercept, quote, a federal judge last December found that the U.S. government was unable to cite a single case in which analysis of the NSA's bulk metadata collection actually stopped an imminent terrorist attack, end quote. She states that the fact that we have to be able to violate some privacy in order to prevent things like Bernardino or Paris attacks. Well, even when we are able to violate those things, it does not justify the fact that we can have security. At the end of today's debate route, history has shown the fact that when you don't value the individual and their liberties first, you will eventually lose your ability to be secure. Thank you.